Hey everybody, this is John Leon Guerrero. Our guest today is the mighty and powerful Greg Errico. Seriously, one of my all-time heroes. He made a name for himself as the original drummer for Sly and the Family Stone, where he delivered so many glorious and influential grooves and played Woodstock in what was a groundbreaking band both musically and socially. And boy, could we use their influence right now, huh? He eventually departed from the band. He was the first original member to do so, and the rest followed shortly after. But he went on to play with Weather Report, David Bowie, Santana, the Grateful Dead, and the Jerry Garcia Band. He has recently been a part of the reformed Quicksilver Messenger Service, which was a Bay Area mainstay in the 60s and 70s, pulled back together in 2006. And speaking of pulled back together, every once in a while, we see a reformed Family Stone led by Freddie, and Greg holds it down there too. Greg took a turn at producing when he assembled all of his friends from Tower of Power and all the rest of the Bay Area acts, the Pointer Sisters, for the debut album by Betty Davis. And the result will go down in the annals of funk history. It's just obscure enough to separate the true funk soldiers, and is truly among my favorites of all time. That album is fantastic. We recorded this episode in the midst of the COVID quarantine, but we got to see Greg on screen, and he looks fantastic. He's clearly staying fit, taking good care of himself, and that was great to see. It's a volatile time for our friends in the entertainment industry, so I just want to encourage all of you to patronize our favorite artists, however they're putting content out, favorite restaurants, favorite entertainment venues, as we all make our way back to normal, whatever that's going to look like. We're all in this together, and we will get back to live music. We appreciate your support on the Break It Down show too, so please let your friends in on it. Pass the link around. Reach back to us. John at breakitdownshow.com for me, or Pete at breakitdownshow.com for old Pedro. And we both want to hear from you about music, about funk, about Greg and his work, whatever else you think is interesting. Also, get yourself a t-shirt or a hoodie on our website and show everyone how the players represent. New t-shirts out just now. So, around here we like to support the folks at Save the Brave too. They help veterans cope with PTS, and you could read about them and lend your support if you choose to do so at savethebrave.org. We hope you do it by sending them a little bit of money, and if you're in Southern California, maybe a little bit of your time too. They're all trying to figure this out just like we are, but we will all get through this together, and they do a great job. Again, savethebrave.org for more info, or email us and we'll help put you in touch. And finally, keep your eyes and ears out for Pete's new series coming out in July, The Prison Chronicles. He explores the criminal justice and correction systems in a way we haven't seen before, and it's a tremendous piece of work that we think will move you and make you think about the way our correction systems work. Back to the fun. Our guest today, one of my very favorite drummers ever, the great Greg Errico. Enjoy it.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
This is Greg Errico, and you're listening to the Break It Down Show.
And now, the Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Joining us today, also PC Munoz. He's a Bay Area drummer, lives in San Francisco. This is a special episode for us, Greg, because we're Bay Area drummers.
Yeah.
And, a lot of the formation of what we were doing as drummers, of course, but also just as artists trying to figure it out and take example within the musical landscape, man, we have you to thank. So this is a very special day for us.
In other words, we spent our youth copying you.
With that being said, got off of an hour. We've been doing this thing called, I'm not sure we'll call it Five Sticks. It's 5 guys. The theme is back from mid-60s to set through the 70s, the legacy of the Bay Area here. It was kind of like a musical renaissance, okay? And so it's about 5 drummers from here. Well, one was from New York, but he came here and lived here during that period. And it's David Garibaldi, Lenny White, Mike Clark, Michael Shreve, and myself.
Oh, for
And
crying out loud.
Nice.
we're talking. I mean, it's not found its way to where it's going yet, but we're taping the content via Zoom, and it's just amazing. I mean, today we talked about. David was telling the story about getting hit by the train. Remember that a couple
Yeah.
weeks ago? And it was just, we're talking about all our issues with, what comes around with agent having to prepare to go play and how, all these things, and then talking about things that happened to us. So, and I said, I only got an hour today, guys, and I had to go right at, at the peak of this conversation. All right, they were all forgiving. Anyway, I thought that would be interesting because you guys are area drummers, and we're just, we're having a ball. We've taped about, I don't know. We've been doing it like every couple days for about an hour and a half. And we
Wow.
got about, I don't know, maybe 10 tapings so far. And, I'm not sure what we're talking to a couple of different people, that different possibilities, but I'm really excited about it.
That is
And,
really exciting. I used
yeah.
to study with Dave when I was a teenager.
Did you really?
Yeah, and he
Yeah.
wouldn't remember me because I was a terrible student. But I have a neat Dave Garibaldi story, and I'm reluctant to tell. Of course, I'll tell you guys, but I was reluctant to tell it because, it doesn't make me look all that great. I really liked to chase chicks around back then, and he's disciplined and wanted to give his best and wanted me to give my best, and I gave him less than my best. So I'm sorry that I squandered that opportunity with him.
Ago, right?
Yeah, long time ago.
We all have our long time ago stories, right?
So PC is he actually lives in the city, and like I said, we're excited to talk to you because being Bay Area drummers, when I said, "Hey, PC, join me with this conversation with Greg Errico," he was like, "Oh boy." So PC, take it away, man. Where do you want to start?
I actually wanted to start kind of personal with the beginning. I know you're a native San Franciscan, right?
Yeah, I was born and raised in San Francisco.
Yeah, I just because I'm living here and I'm raising my kid here. He's a San Francisco kid too. Very, very proud. I know San Francisco natives are very proud. Right. So I'm just, what are your memories of when you were a kid, and which neighborhood did you grow up in, and what schools did you go to?
I grew up out in the Outer Mission, and I went to Hillcrest was the elementary, Portola Junior High, Woodrow Wilson, and then we moved to up above the Cow Palace there, but I was in right over the line, so I was in Daly City. So I went to Jefferson, and I graduated from Jefferson. And that's the whole thing about this Renaissance I'm talking about in that time period, because there's so much going on. I mean, that was just before. So I graduated in '66, and that was just before just as the Bay Area was getting about ready to explode with this new music scene, all these genres and these mixes of genres and whole new approach, and jam bands and Latin rock and funk, jazz rock, and you name it. I mean, it was just crazy what was coming out of here. In San Francisco, I remember, being an international intersection, it's always exposed to just all kinds of different music, And so I was surrounded with that stuff. So San Francisco had never been the center for where all the music was coming from that we were listening to on the radio. All was New York or Los Angeles, and that's where the business was. That's where the artists would go to get into it, and so on and so forth. But San Francisco was doing its own thing and getting ready to present it all in a new way. And Bill Graham coming out here, it's just an amazing intersection of these different elements that happened in a big way. It was part of what changed the whole future of music. What came from the UK. And I think those probably were two of the most powerful forces that really left a big ripple.
Yeah.
That's spectacular, because the other thing that was happening here was all the social stuff. Being that I should tell our audience, if there's anybody who doesn't know, Greg Errico was the founding drummer in Sly and the Family Stone. And that was more than just a musical movement. And it definitely was a musical movement, but it was also a social movement. And, you were a part of the band that was really the first multi-ethnic band.
Yeah.
And you had male and female I mean, everybody was represented in that band. There was somebody in there that was you and somebody you could love no matter who you were. And that changed everything. So you said you graduated in 66 though. So the band happened right after high school for you.
Band started the last week of December of 1966. I still had a half year to go in high school. So I hadn't graduated. And Freddie, Sly's brother, Stone, and I had a band up until that point. And that started about a year before. And I had met Freddie through Leon Patilla, who was another San Francisco guy. He had a band called Leon's Creation. And literally it all happened from one night. I'm going out. I got my hand on the exit door from the house going out Friday night. And the phone rings and I grab it as I got my hand on the door. I'm opening the door. And it's Leon Patilla. And he goes, Greg, man, you got to help me out. Every once in a while, he'd call me when his drummer was sick. And his name was Greg also. And I said, what's going on? He goes, I got a gig at the White tonight. Greg's sick, man. You got to come down, man. Could you? I said, sure, man. Okay. I threw my drums in the car and went down to the Mission Y right in the heart of San Francisco there and played the set in the show. And I met Freddie. Freddie was sitting in with Leon that night. And we hit it off, talked about a few things. You know, his brother had a radio show. He was a DJ on KSOL at that time. And he had a wonderful, very creative radio show. Sly Stone on the radio, man. He was like bad for days.
Yeah.
And he was a producer. He used to do all the shows with Tom Donahue, who's the godfather of FM radio, and Bobby Mitchell. They were running KYA, which was an AM station at that time. This is before FM. Okay. And so all the shows that came to San Francisco, like at the Cow Palace, Sly was the music director and he produced for Autumn Records. And so there's this whole synergy was happening and he had the radio show. So a couple of weeks later, long story short, Leon called me again. It was another gig and Freddie's on the gig again. So we hit it off pretty good. And he goes, I want to start something. You want to do it with me? I said, sure. So we started a thing called Freddie and the Stone Souls. Had 3 horns, 3 tenors, alto and 2 tenors, and Freddie played guitar too and sang bass and myself. And we hit it for about a year. And then if you want to talk about the intricacies of all the different parts as it moved along, we can. But then that turned into, Sly had made it a couple of attempts of starting to, it didn't work for him. And this last shot at it, he had kind of handpicked everybody. He came to his brother and he said, bring someone from who would you like to bring from your group? And he goes, I want to bring Greg. And so the night that we all met was actually, I was going to the house, to Freddie's house, in Sly's house, for rehearsal with the Stone Souls. And none of the guys were there. And I walked in and Sly and Freddie sitting there, what's going on? He goes, we're starting a new thing tonight. You know, he had told me about it, right? And that night we all met. We didn't even play. We talked about what we were going to do. And it was very exciting because, this is 60s things that were going on socially. And here we got, black, white, male, female are getting together to do a music group. What? It was just, it felt totally natural for us and exciting.
Well, that first night that you were there together, was it the whole lineup?
There was
you
and
Larry and Jerry and Cynthia.
For the first time, we all met for the first time. Sly had
Freddie and Rose, everybody.
Sly had reached out to Cynthia, told about it, reached out to went and seen Larry and go, okay, you're going to be in this too. And, he talked to his brother. It was all kind of like prearranged to meet this night. Yeah. And that was the first time we all met. And the very next night we started practicing.
Where precisely was that? Do you remember where exactly that was?
Yeah, it was 700 Urbana Street, right off of Ocean Avenue. That's where Sly lived. He had a house. Wow. He had bought, with his success from producing Bobby Freeman, Swim. He had a hit single with that. He had his radio show, So he was working. He was doing good, and that's where the family lived. And we rehearsed. We got to.
I grew up in Vallejo. I was hoping you were going to say that. That happened at Freddie's house in Vallejo.
No, they had moved from Vallejo a few years before that. They were living in Vallejo. Yeah, the family was over there.
Vallejo's a great place to be from.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I don't want to speak for PC, but one of the things that we were excited about was we want to ask you all the stuff that, of course, your history with Sly and the Family Stone is compelling, and our audience loves hearing about it. But we want to hear about other things because we know that from there, you guys became a national act. You eventually made your way to the Ed Sullivan Show, and I kind of want to breeze through this stuff and get to the meaty things that we want to ask you. But and then you played Woodstock, and that was enormous.
Mm-hmm.
And was that when it really just kind of the floodgates broke for you guys?
No, I think we did Ed Sullivan Show 3 times, and I got to say that I've talked about. There was someone that did a thing with me. They called it, game-changing moment. I think it was it Vic Firth or Pasty Simple? It was one of the drum companies, and took an interview, and that was the theme. What was your game-changing moment? And I got to say that the Ed Sullivan Show was probably that. And we did some TV shows before that, like regional, maybe even national. But Ed Sullivan, you got to remember back at that time, set the stage here. There was no video games. There was 3 networks that existed. Period. That's all there was for you to see. And when you was on Sunday night, prime time at 8:00, the world seen you, literally. And that went to literally other parts of the world because it was in other countries too. But mainly here in this country, there's 40, 50, 60 million people. That changes your life the next day. They talk about the moment of, we were walking through the airport the night before, everyone's looking at us because we're dressed funny, right? Right? We dressed pretty low. But the next day after the show, everybody's looking at us and coming up to us and, asking questions and and I'm thinking, wow, what just happened? I mean, we ain't no different than we were last night, but the world is different now, And so the point being is, it was a very cool thing. And if you went on there and you connected with people, it really just changed everything, changed the whole dynamic. Gigs, the gigs you get, radio that playing your record, and that was a powerful thing. Probably more so than just having the record break, because I think we at the same time we had just broke Dance to the Music, and that was getting national attention. But that's scattered. This is like a focal point. This is like it's like an explosion. It's like everything focuses on this one point, and then so you really it changes the dynamics of everything. That can't happen anymore. I mean, not like that. Yeah, and
not like that.
And example, the Beatles, Elvis Presley. That was the same.
It would never be that again.
Those will things will happen, but not that. Not that way, and how it affected everybody, and the way that the spirit that it affected everybody. It's really amazing.
So, Greg, do you feel like you I know a lot of people that have experienced the types of things that you have feel, they say it goes so fast. Like, do you remember having a moment at a gig or anything other than the Ed Sullivan where you were like where you sat and you cherished it? You said, I'm here doing this thing. And
you mean that it was like this moment in time is special? It's going to live beyond this moment. Woodstock. Oh yeah, those are significant things. Playing, doing our run at Madison Square Garden for 3 nights and all those kind of things. So they were like more, for lack of a better term, regional things. Just like where you were. These things like Woodstock and Ed Sullivan Show and those kind of things were like beyond, people still talk about, wow, you was at Woodstock. It's like people that weren't there, just, it lives on decades beyond when it happened. And it represents a spirit, and even the moment that you were there. And that would be probably the 2 most significant things.
Yeah.
Our listeners may not remember or weren't there at the time, because I wasn't there at the time either. But you guys played Woodstock at like 4 a.m, and there were still, the house was still jumping, and there were how many? I mean, what was there, like 300,000 people? And you guys, they had to put you guys on the stage on a helicopter, right?
Well, now here's the deal. We went actually on at 3 a.m. We were supposed to go on Saturday night at 8 p.m. Okay. And we had arrived, yes, in a helicopter that afternoon, late that afternoon. So the significance of, just everybody could probably relate to this, so here's what I mean, not many people could probably relate to the adrenaline of going on before a show and how you build yourself up and all that kind of stuff. But maybe you can. So we're supposed to go on at 8. And everything was running behind. So Michael Lang and the different people kept coming up to us and saying, man, you got to give us another hour, man. We're running behind, please, Okay. But for us, it's like, you get ready to go on, you're psyching yourself up. And, and here you're at an event that has never happened before. There's 500,000 people there. You could feel it. You're at something different. This is beyond the norm. On and on and on and on, right? I mean, so it's like, it's a powerful thing.
Yeah.
So, and then when it gets to be like after midnight, 1, 2, here it's like 2 o'clock, and okay, we're going on at 3. All right. And then it had been raining. It's raining now at 3 o'clock in the morning, and everybody is kind of done. They're in their sleeping bags, their tent, they're covered up. They're done. They've been there since Thursday. Sun, dust, rain, loud, on and on and on. Here's like 2 days later, and it's like you're going, we got to go play for this crowd right now, and there's these unusual circumstances, and it's like, at the end of the day, I mean, it boiled down to where we just kind of looked at each other, understood the reality of the moment and what we're about to take on, and just go, all we could do is go on and bring our thing and do it, give it all we have. And that's all you could do. And you can't start tripping on these people being there for, they're all beat up, they're tired, they're rained on, who cares, that kind of thing. So we did just that. And, we just started playing, and after a few minutes, people start coming out of their tents and their sleeping bags and kind of, what's going on, kind of getting into it, bobbing their heads, getting up and dancing. By the third song, they were ours, and the rest was history, man. It was just amazing. The synergy coming from the stage out to the audience, and the audience back to us.
Insanity. 3 in the morning.
Astounding performance, It's so astounding to see, even whenever you watch it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was a very unusual thing. And of course, even at that, you had no idea, you didn't realize the significance of this moment and how it would carry into the future and what it would mean to people and what it would represent, It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I wanted to get John and I were particularly excited about, your work as a producer. Like, I'm a little biased. I think drummers make great producers.
You're right.
Because we sit back there and we know what this song is made of. and I think, so I'm a little biased that way, but I do actually believe that. And, I know John and I were particularly, curious about like the whole Betty Davis project, like how that came about and what that was all about. And
so that was like I had left Sly in 71. I had left the group, took a year off. And then I went out I think the first going out was with David Bowie, Diamond Dogs tour. And then at the same time, Dougie Rauch was living with me. He was a bass player, played with Santana, and he knew Miroslav Viatos, did some other history. I'm kind of going off the point, but I'm just thinking of the time, trying to gather my time frame. So around 72, me and Michael Carabello, the original conga player with Santana, we were working on a project, and he was going out with Betty at the time.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This was after, she had been, was married to Miles. They had been together about a year or so. He kept telling me that she wanted to meet me, and she was coming out from New York. And so we're this particular week we're in the studio, and he goes, "Can I bring her down?" I go, "Sure, yeah." So he brings it down to the studio, and we start talking, and she's telling me about how she just got a record deal, and she wants to make a record, and she had tried some stuff with Miles and T.O. and it just wasn't, and some significant players. I mean, like the Cats, right? It wasn't what she was hearing, what she wanted to do, what she was feeling. So obviously she was feeling more of stuff coming from more of the funk as opposed to the jazz, spirit. So I said, yeah, I'll do the project. She asked me to produce the project. So we got into it in 72, Bay Area, casting this like casting a movie, but this is a music project. It was like a kid in a candy store. I mean, you see the people that were on it. I mean, it was just like, hey, Neil, hey, Larry, hey, just Tower Power, the Pointer Sisters hadn't even made their record yet. They were singing with a guy called Sylvester.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, they hadn't got their deal yet or anything. It was this wonderful thing. We did it at Wally Hyder's. And
okay.
I should move around. So right if I move around, take in the music. I got some pictures of some of these people about too. I guess that would be mine will make it interesting, right? See, Miles. You've seen there's Miles there. These guys. Yeah, there's David. I was talking about it earlier. Matter of fact, that was Universal Amphitheater with Doug Ross playing bass, and I'm playing. What a band he had! That was like Michael Garson, keyboard, the music director. Michael Garson, Earl Slick on guitar, David Sanborn on tenor, Luther Vandross singing background. It was the band was just amazing. So we're talking about Betty, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the first record, and then she did a couple more after that. I was out with the weather report then, so I couldn't do it, and she took over, and she was just amazing. She, that music, it's lived on into the decades, and with not being like a hit record or anything, I mean, it was never like a hit single off of it, but she was like a female George Clinton 10 years ahead of that.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And
that's the funk secret handshake, man.
Yeah. It's just a shame that she just didn't have anybody represented her. She was out there by herself, more or less. And it was a rough world to survive, that kind of thing. And I think that's part of what played into her eventually just, going and hiding out.
Bailing out on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you can't blame her, but that record was so good. And it really is the secret handshake. I mean, when, somebody says they love the funk, okay, great. There's the obvious stuff, Sly, George Clinton, P-Funk. And then every once in a while, I just kind of mumble under my breath something about Betty Davis, and you see who responds to that. And in fact, so our mutual friend is Jeff Traeger.
Oh,
and Jeff Traeger was on the show. He's been on the show probably 3 or 4 times.
Right.
Yeah. And the first time he was on the show, he was talking about a show that he had promoted called The Legends of Latin Rock or something, and you played on it.
Yeah, there were several of those. They did that every year for about 8, 9, 10 years. The Voices of Latin Rock was in San Francisco. And, there was a lot
Voices
of people
of Latin Rock.
Been through that. I've done several of them. They were great.
Yeah.
Good ones.
Well, he mentioned that. And so when he mentioned your name, I went, oh, Greg Errico, man, one of my favorite drummers. And he said, yeah, he's a really good drummer, pretty good producer too. And I said, I love that Betty Davis record.
Yeah.
And then that's when his guard went down. He went, okay, all right. And he relaxed and he opened up, and that was like, okay, now we just got real.
Yeah.
So that's the litmus, man. Whenever we bring that up, if somebody knows what they're talking about, they go, oh, yeah.
He just called me a little bit ago, but I couldn't answer because I was setting this thing up. So he's probably mad that I didn't answer. I'll call him back. That's all right. We go way back.
Yeah, give him. Well, yeah, I love that guy, man. He's really something else.
Yeah.
Hey, PC, since you brought that up, talk to Greg about ask Greg that question you were talking about regarding jam bands. Oh yeah, I wanted to see what your thoughts were on this, Greg, just because you move fluidly between the worlds. I've kind of noticed that there's audience-wise, there seems to be an overlap sometimes between hardcore funk heads and the people that go see jam bands. Like I know when an old deadhead who goes to see P-Funk religiously. And I see a lot of people kind of doing that. I'm wondering what you think the common vibe is there between the jam bands and and the big funk bands, and why that kind of brings out a cult like. I don't mean cult like in a negative way, but like deep followers.
No, I understand what you're saying. It's probably more something that developed later on, as opposed to when either one of those genres really, rooted, took their place and things and developed their fan base. And both genres, I'd say, have longevity. So at that point in time, there's this synergy, I think, that happens between just how would I put it? Bands like, like George. I mean, he's been out there decade after decade after decade. The Grateful Dead, decade after decade after decade. They build their thing, and it's a powerful thing. People go because I think people go. Garcia, I was in the Garcia band for 10 years on and off. And he used to say about the Dead, I mean, it was like going to church. He's like, why are all these people coming? Bill Graham would always say, this band is amazing. They never had a hit record, and they outgross all the other bands that are touring and out there, that have these big hit records. And you know what I mean? And it's that thing that you bring, that you represent. And people, when they go to a concert, they want that experience. They want to be comfortable. They want to know that I'm going and I'm going to have this experience. I just know it. There's nothing's going to get in the way of it, and this gets delivered. No matter if it was a good show, bad show, it doesn't matter. It's like everybody. I used to notice that with the Grateful Dead audiences, and it still plays out today. I mean, there was all these different kinds of people. There was the hippies, and then there was there were sports people that would go. There were jazz musicians who would go. I mean, after this has been around for a long time, because they respected what they brought, and the music was almost secondary. The music was a vehicle to get to these moments or these seconds of brilliance or moments of brilliance, and it was delivered and always in a high level production. The sound was always good. You could always kind of depend on the vibe that you're. There's always a celebrative experience, and music was a vehicle, and then of course the personalities of the group, and
Yeah, it kind of lends itself to this
deep
George communal experience.
Even through his challenging years, he always showed up and played. He always showed up and brought it and gave it his all. Santana, same thing, through all the different decades and all the different musical changes and personnel changes and what have you.
And continued.
Yeah.
Yeah. Greg, if you were to produce an album today, where would you do it and how would you do it? And how has your process changed over the years? And, where are you with technology now? You know where I'm going with this? Like, if we went to go make a record right now, where would we do it? How would we do it? What's your approach?
Well, technology's changed tremendously. It's unbelievable. There's several ways. There's not, going back in time, like, when we started, like back in the mid 60s, there was the studio. I mean, there was only one way to do it.
Yeah.
It's developed in through the ages and through the advancement of technology and the inventions of, drum machines and digital and all this. I mean, records are made now, in your front room, in your garage. But studio still has its place. And, so depending on what kind of a project was and the artist and the thing, you could achieve this piece of art, being a file of music, it used to be called, a record, and then a CD or a cassette and so on and so forth. But you could capture that musical moment and a lot of different environments or a lot of different ways and a lot of different levels that are meaningful. Whereas, like say back in the 60s, it was just a studio and you had to have a good engineer and, there was just one place you could do it in.
Well, I'm saying if I come to you with a pile of songs and I say, Greg, I want to do this record. I want you to produce it. We're going to want, some live elements. We're going to want some horns, but I have some things here that we could, program. Where do you take me? Where do you want to do it? Where do you want to create?
Well, I've done stuff in the recent years live. I've done it like in a prison. We did a couple times over the decades. I've done a prison project twice, two significant ones. One back in the 70s, and then one about 8 years ago down in Louisiana State Prison. What's it called? I can't think of the name of it right now. But we did, so we brought a mobile unit, or in this case, this last one in Louisiana was just a laptop with Pro Tools and everything. You don't need to have all the big recording gear. Whereas when I did it back in the 70s, it was a mobile recording truck that had all the gear that you would have in a traditional studio, 2-inch tape machine and so on and so forth. So the technology changes. I mean, you could make, if you got, it's at the end of the day, it's good songs, just good songs. If you got a good song, there's a lot of ways you could approach it now. You could do it by exchanging music files. You hear like hit machines like Bruno Mars. He puts them out like, you know what I mean? And he's going into studios, but there's a lot of ways. Sometimes you're sending a file over a phone line to the other side of the country to someone to put drummer part on.
Yeah, or like
guitar part, or there's no one way. I would say I did a project not too long ago where we're using strings and stuff. I've been into Capitol in this last few years, which is a really famous studio. One of the
classic
traditional classic recording studios that still exist. I was doing some stuff about 10 years ago at Fantasy in Berkeley, and it's gone. It's and fortunately I've been able to work in some of the best ones over the years, and a lot of them are gone. There's a few that are still there. If you want to do a big string date or a big band horn date, you can still do that. And those studios are there for that, but not many of them. But there are a lot of ways to make records that there's people. What is that gal that just got picked up all the young gal that picked up all the Grammys?
Billie Eilish.
Yeah, her and her is that her brother or
her brother?
Yeah, her brother.
His piano. I mean, they did that stuff in the bathroom.
Yeah,
their house. And so there's many ways to do it now. And so, in answer to your question, I guess if you brought me, a pile of songs, and if you were the artist, or if here's the artist, this is who it's going to be, or it's a band, you take all those things into account, and you kind of play it like a song. Where's it feel like to go with this in real time? So there's no look it up, pat answer, A, B, or C. It ain't like that. It's like you play the spirit of what it is, the material, the artist, the band. That would be my approach.
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here, and if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it.
You play the spirit of what it is, the material, the artist, the band. That would be my approach.
Hey, Mary from Virginia is asking if you think music is better or worse due to the availability of technology. So now that we're in the world of availability, what do you think?
Well, it's gotten good again. I think there was a period where it got very mechanical and sterile and soulless. But as things evolve, artists are artists. And so when it comes back to where artists are going to find their way to make it real. And with that being said, there's a lot of great stuff coming out again today. I've seen it go through its paces. So you could still make great records and record and perform great songs and capture magical moments. You could still do that, definitely, no doubt.
So along with the technological changes and lack of studios and stuff like that, the business side has changed a lot too.
The which?
The business side of music.
Oh yeah.
And and right now it's tough for musicians. There's no gigs, and so I'm just wondering, and the music, the value of it is it's been devalued in our society in some ways, and I'm just wondering, how. What do you think of the current way people do business with music, like the opportunities independent artists have online, and then those sorts of changes?
I think I got my view with the business does not exist as it used to. I mean, it's changed tremendously. Yeah. But with that being said, so back in the day, you used to have to sign up with a big company, and it was a major undertaking. There was no really shortcuts. With the advent of the computer and the internet, there are artists that are doing very well today that develop their fan base through the easy access of the internet. But now, so anybody could put something and publish something and get something on, the game ends up being the same in as far as you got to rise above all the rest. Back in the day, it was simply, when you connected with an audience, you still needed that big muscle, marketing and promotion, big dollars, with a lot of people in back of that scene making all that happen, and today you could access big, large audiences, but you still got to connect. You got to connect with them initially. Either it's a lot of work over a period of time to develop this audience, or somehow all of a sudden appear in an intersection where there's a lot of people and you got something that's going to connect, but you just got to be there and show up. So, you go out and you tour and all this. So it's the same mechanics in that way, but it's just a different animal, it is. I guess I don't. I can't say it's hard. It's just different, because if you're passionate about, you're an artist, you're writing songs or whatever, or you have a group, and if you're really passionate about it, you'll find your way. You go out there, you work hard, you'll throw everything you got at it, and keep at it, and not be beat up by things that happen that try to keep you from doing what you want to do. This goes for everybody and anybody. It's the same thing. It's a lot of work. It's different. I kind of feel in a sense that I was fortunate and blessed to be at the time that I was. I'm lucky. I'm fortunate. But then again, I was passionate about what I was doing, and there was a lot of places that I could have just gave up and jumped off. But it's a different time now, and at the end of the day, the people that are connecting and making good music and getting people excited and going out there and have a fan base and audience are doing the same thing. They're passionate about it. They don't let anything get in the way of them doing it, and they're going to, this is what they're going to do.
Let me ask you something, Greg, about, I think you were probably the first drummer who played along with a drum machine. And when that experimentation was happening, I know you guys, were a collaborative band, and essentially under Sly's leadership. How was that, and how did you react to the drum machine? Because now it's a reality. I know PC plays alongside one, and I do too, and it's just a part of the quiver now. It's part of your arsenal.
Right.
But then when it was new, how did you feel about it?
Well, most of our stuff, Sly didn't use a drum machine until I left the band. And actually, it probably, yes, that happened more as a, uh, how would you put
So
it?
you didn't play on the entire Riot album?
No, those were tracks that I had previously cut, and we never finished them. So with the pressure from the record company to continue to record,
Yeah.
there was stuff going on. I had left, and he had a lot of pressure to keep recording. So as he was like looking for drummers and this and that, um, he got the drum machine, what Larry called
Got a hold of a rhythm ace.
the funk box. Yeah, it was a rhythm ace. That machine was a very unsophisticated, very corny sounding. Actually, if you was to go in a Holiday Inn in 1969, 70, and there was a lounge act in there, a guy playing,
and you knew how to do the foxtrot.
You would have that, and it would be a cha-cha or a waltz or, I mean, right? When you press the button, that's what came out. But so Sly needed some, as he's laying grooves down, when I could just see that he, needed some time. So someone probably brought this thing over, and is what he ended up doing. So I don't know what happened in between, but what he ended up doing was, in laying some of the demos down, he realized this thing was keeping, perfect time.
Perfect time, yeah.
But this is corny. Now wait a minute. And thinking how Sly would, and he's a drummer in heart himself. I mean, he thinks rhythm, right? Come on. So he takes the machine, he takes the thing, and instead of you press it, and that starts on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, check, check, 2, 3, check, check, right? And he starts it, just takes it, probably records a loop, and edits it by editing the tape, and creates the 1 on the 3.
Yeah.
So 1, 2, 3 is now going to be the 1. So he turned that beat, that rhythm inside out, and created a whole other thing to the ear. It's like, wow, so now he's got time, but he's got something what's that? Everyone hears it the first time. What is that?
Yeah.
And it was cool. And then put the bass line against it, So he inverted the beat and made something that was corny, interesting, and funky. And that's
awesome.
He's the first one, to do a Family Affair.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I thought you were still around for that, and
no.
So
I left in 71. That was late 70s.
Screw that drum machine.
Yeah. So, I mean, he started, and that became, then the drum machine became, guys were working. I knew Roger Lynn in L.A., and these guys, and they started making these drum machines that were pretty sophisticated as time went on, way beyond what that original rhythm ace was doing. And and then, I mean, it got to a point to all the LA studio guys, producers were creating records with drum machines, and later on, not in the 70s, but probably the 80s, and later on in the 80s and into the 90s, the whole world changed. A lot of these guys weren't getting all the sessions like they used to get, and I mean, it changed the whole. Then it comes full back around. I mean, there will never be anything to replace the real things and real players, and it's just like songwriters. There were songwriters that were never artists to go and toured as artists, but they started making hit records. And they would do their demos, and they had all the production stuff all by a press of a button. And these things sounded decent. Now that sounds good, but it didn't. It's kind of like eating a meal with all pre-made food, that you just add water and, as opposed to a real home cooked meal,
That's right.
It lasts with, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And,
stick to your ribs.
Yeah. So that's why we were talking about, is there good music still? That person asked, I mean, of course now there is again, but there was a time period where it was all computers and machines, and it was soulless.
You know,
Yeah.
sounded good.
Yeah. It came back around because now there's the combination.
Again. It's kind of like, you were hungry, you ate it, and but I'm hungry 2 seconds later, not satisfying.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Let's see, we got another question. But going forward after this quarantine is over, how do you see musical artists introducing their music without doing concerts and touring and playing clubs due to the limitation of the crowds? So I'm going to answer or start to answer because I want to hear more about this. Before you joined, Mary, Greg talked about a project he's doing called 5 Drummers, and it's happening over Zoom.
What?
And I think that's gonna continue to grow.
This is more of talk about history and stuff and about our experiences. But you see, like I watched, what was it? The Voice was on last this week. This was the first one where they did where everyone's in a different part of the country and they're doing it like on Zoom or whatever, like we're doing right here with multiple screens. And it's really difficult. I mean, when you're talking about the moment that we're all in worldwide, this isn't just this country or just any particular anything. It's all of us. This is a game changer. And there's who knows? It's like, I talk to all the different bands that touring lately, and it's really frustrating. There's guys that are doing concerts from their room, piano and singing. I've seen huge artists down to unknown artists and everything in between, just putting it out there. It is a very painful time and uncertain time as far as how's this going to play out in the future. Who knows? I think
whoever knows that's going to make a lot of money.
Well, here's the deal. If anything, those artists that perform and bands that could go out there and play, when the lights go on again and the stage opens up, it's going to be incredible. But I mean, geez, I was just reading some stuff on the whole touring industry collapsing.
Yeah.
I mean,
collapsing.
No one could. Las Vegas is closed down. All the different big concert venues. I mean, there's nothing anywhere unless there is no unless. I mean, you hear about things opening up, but I don't think it's going to open up. I don't think until we have a cure for this thing, and that could be a year away still from same information you got. We all hear the same thing. And just logic tells you that's probably the case.
Yeah.
But as far as
we are going to be hungry when it happens, it's going to be a great show, and there's going to be a lot of screwing afterwards.
You're going to want to go hear a live concert more than ever. I think I'm going to want to play more than ever.
Absolutely.
It's going to be amazing. So I see a lot of light at the end of the tunnel, but the tunnel's long. Seems like.
PC, one last question.
I was going to ask about the drum machine thing, but I'm glad we got to talking about the studios, because I was wondering just, if there's a particular studio or venue in San Francisco that you miss the most, that you just are like, man, that place was special. Or in the Bay Area.
Geez, there's been so many over the years. Yeah. I mean, remember Winterland and the original Fillmore. I mean, Fillmore's opening again. That's a wonderful room to play. We just did a show. One of the last shows that I played was we were supposed to do New Year's Eve actually at the Fillmore with me guesting with Dump doing the Sly songbook and David Garibaldi doing the Tower songbook with the Tower Power Horns. They passed on it for some reason. We ended up doing the show at Great American Music Hall, which was sold out. It was just fabulous. It was great.
Also a great joint.
Yeah, that's a good place, and that's still there. That became a comedy room during the 80s. Remember Robin Williams, and before that, it was Great American Music Hall. It was music hall, and it's a great venue. There was smaller clubs. You had like places like Slim's. That was a cool place, and I think that's still there.
Yeah.
About to close, right?
I remember many great nights at the beside playing there, just visiting there and seeing other people. Winterland, you know. It's not like it used to be though, as far as the music scene in San Francisco. There were so many clubs going on, and there was always something in Marin County or down the peninsula. There was always music in small venues, large venues to go see. It's not like that. It's not as accessible, as much as it used to be. But there are places in Berkeley. There's a couple of cool places. And they, there's some theaters. They're happening good venues right now. You can't do any of it,
Yeah. Well, coming down the home stretch, man, we've had you for an hour, and I know that we just barely scratched the surface. 2 questions for you. First one, and most important, will you come back on the show?
Absolutely. I'm having fun.
Good, because we got so much more to talk with you about. Yeah. Our guest today, everybody, has been the great Greg Errico, of whom I have always been a big fan. You were part of my musical upbringing, and I know that the same is true with PC. We grew up with you playing, and we emulated your playing to learn our way around the drum set. And so we could never thank you enough for that. But I just want to say also, we had Sly on the show. He was our 100th episode.
Recently?
And we were very, very lucky to get him. It was about 3 years ago.
Cool.
We were very lucky to get him because, he just doesn't talk to anybody anymore.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic to have him. But I'll tell you, we want him to do well, and we want him to and I hear he's doing okay lately. But you look fantastic, man, and I'm really happy that you are, holding up the way you are. And I was talking to my dad about having you on, and he's a sax player who really had Sly the Family Stone records on around the house, and so introduced me and really formed my taste in music, and a lot of it had to do with you. So he was excited to hear that we were going to be talking with you, and I said, hey man, you ought to see him. And my dad's holding up great too. Good. I said, you ought to see him. He looks fantastic. And so we're all excited about that, man. And we're glad to see you healthy and doing well, and hope to see a whole lot more of you however we come out of this.
Well, I feel blessed, and I hope to continue to go out there and, to still, but we were the 5 drummers we're talking about tonight.
Yeah.
Sports, we have to, a lot of what we go through physically is, like sports athletes, right? And I've made the point of, man, if you're playing football, guys, you're done at 38, 40 years old, you're done.
Yeah.
We're like late 60s, 70s, you know what I mean? And we're still able to go out there. This, we have our issues, but we get it up to speed, like I got carpal tunnel and all, my joints are
man.
Take glucosamine and all that stuff. But I'll tell you, and I was telling the guys tonight, when I get up, when I get behind, when I start playing, it all goes away. I don't feel nothing. I don't feel anything. And I'm hurting in between, right? Like after, and like, just staying home, or if I'm not out there for a month or whatever, I get behind the set and it all goes away. So keep me on the set.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm surrounded by great drummers today. The legendary Greg Errico, the venerable PC Munoz. Everybody catch PC Munoz all around the Bay Area, but a lot at Freight and Salvage. And also, Pete's not bad on the Afushi and the Cuica. And you hand him something, boy, he'll make it happen.
All right.
So,
you're in the right place.
Hey, we love you, man. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here, and hope to see you guys again.